Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 31 of the Technology for Good show. My guest today is John Collins, but John seems to be having a little bit of trouble getting into the show. So we're going to kick off without him and hope he gets a chance to join us. So he's messaging me here on Facebook in the background. I'm hearing bing, 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 and we'll try and get him in and see if he can come up to speed on where we are. He's read the stories. He's checking all his emails, all his mailboxes. I'm reading the messages coming in as I'm speaking here, and I was never good at multitasking, so keep him talking, he's telling me. Okay. We'll kick off, and hopefully John will be with us shortly. I think the invite system I don't think it's John's fault. I think the invite system on the Hangout is a bit borked at the moment. I tried inviting one of my own email addresses and the invite didn't come through either. So in fairness to John, not his fault. Okay, so hopefully it gets fixed and John can join us. But in the meantime, we'll start into the stories. It's been a couple of weeks and I'm sorry about that. I've been traveling. But back with a bang, as we say. And the first story that I wanted to bring up, as usual, we'll do the climate stories first. And the first story, 2014 on track to be the hottest year on record. And this story coming from the Climate Central site, and they talk about the fact that, and there's links here to it, August was the warmest August on record. That's August 2014, warmest August on record. NASA mentioned there a couple of days ago, and there's a link to the story there on the Climate Central site, links to NASA off that. But just days after that, the NOAA, the American National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, confirmed that, but also said there's a good chance that 2014 could become the warmest year on record. And they're basing that on the fact that, okay, despite the fact that the eastern US had a cooler than average 2014, the rest of the world, as you can see here, is all kind of pretty and pink and some areas of red up here as well. So up to 5 degrees warmer than average in some spots. And if you look at this chart here, this is the year-to-date global temperature, and 2014 is this black line here. And so far we're in August. The other years out here to December, you can see the two hottest years to date were 2010, and that's this one here, this kind of pink one, and 2005, this orange one here. Now, 2014 is above both 98, which went down a bit at the end, and it's also, or sorry, it's below 98, and it's below 2010. But the thing is, these 2 years, the two hottest years on record, they started dipping. The high temperature started dipping, whereas 2014 hasn't started dipping yet, and we're into August, and we're in an El Nino year, so the chances of this dipping are slim for another while yet. So it's looking very like 2014, unfortunately, is going to be the hottest year on record. And you know, that's a trend that's going to continue. 2014 has also been the year of the highest carbon emissions to date. It broke 400 parts per million CO2 in the atmosphere, and that's going north all the time. So okay, that's the bad news, and we always on this show we start with a bad news story, and then we start into the better news. So with that, this week is probably going to be a little bit better news, so less bad news. So there are fewer stories this week. There are more thematic things, so we'll have a couple of themes that we'll talk about. We'll end up probably finishing the show a little earlier, especially if Joe doesn't manage to get or John doesn't manage to get on, because you know there's only so much talking I can do. So hopefully we'll finish early this week and get you a half hour earlier in half hour back in your day, and we'll head on to the other stories now. So the next story I wanted to talk about is in slightly better news, and it is the fact that there is a global day of action taking place this weekend. Now, the name Global Day of Action is a bit of a misnomer because it's 2 days. It depends on where you are. This is taking place in conjunction with a summit that's happening in New York. And that's a political summit of leaders to talk about climate change. So there's going to be a big demonstration in New York, but also, and you can see it on this side here, and again, as usual, links will be in the show notes. There are going to be John tells me he's listening. Okay, I got a message. John's listening. That's halfway there, John. I'm not sure, John, what's happening with the invites and why you're not getting them. Anyway, we'll continue on. So the Global Day of Action is happening, as the name suggests, not just in New York, but globally. And clicking on the Join the Mobilization, you will be able to see a map. You can see it here, of all the events that are taking place throughout the world. So you can either organize an event or join an event. You can zoom into wherever you're based, find the nearest event to you, and go and join it. For me, there's a march in Seville on Sunday afternoon, 1 o'clock, taking place in Plaza de la Encarnación. So I'll be there, and I'll be joining that. But you feel free, find the nearest one to you, go and join it, send a message to your politicians that climate action is important and that it's something we all care about. Okay, so next story. And this is one that's near and dear to my own heart. Typically on this show, I'll have a section every week that talks about communications. And it's often referencing fiber optic, and that kind of thing, because for me, I think increasing people's ability to communicate is vital. It's absolutely vital for people to get, well, to be more productive, to be able to talk to each other. You know, the whole 9 yards, really. The more people can communicate, the more they can get online, the more educational facilities they can access, the more information they can access, the more sites they can access, the more shopping they can do, the more e-commerce that can take place, the more connectivity is, the better for everybody. It's that kind of tide that raises all boats. Now, I say this is near and dear to my own heart because just yesterday I had my home connection upgraded from a DSL connection, which I'd had since I moved to Spain here 6 years ago, a crappy DSL connection, to a fiber connection. So I now have a fiber optic connection, which means for me, I upload quite a bit of video to YouTube. And the video files can be, you know, 2, 3, 4, 500 megabytes or even higher, depending on what kind of video it is. And uploading those through a DSL connection with a maximum upload of 600K was just a nightmare. It would take hours. Literally, you'd set the upload and you'd go off and do something else. You'd check back 2 hours later and it'd be like 50% complete. Whereas this morning, I managed to upload 3 videos, each of them around between 2 and 500 megabytes. The largest one was about 500 megabytes, and when I stopped and watched that one just to see how long it would take, and when I added it to the YouTube upload and clicked upload, it took a couple of seconds. It started sucking it in, and then it calculated for a second and said, okay, it'll take 7 minutes to upload this. 7 minutes for a 500 megabyte file. Normally that would have taken me on the DSL, that would have taken hours and hours. So, I'm absolutely delighted with the speed bump, and anyone else will be as well. So this study, to get back to the the actual story itself, this study is saying cities with super fast internet speeds are more productive, and I can totally understand why. And the story itself, if you read it, says it's an article of faith among politicians, investors, and entrepreneurs that the internet and access to it is an economic engine, and so on and so on. But actually, there's a study, they've gone out It comes from a report by a group called the Boston Analysis Group. Cities that offer broadband at 1 gig per second, roughly 100 times the national average of 10 meg per second, report a higher per capita GDP, and it compared to cities that lack those internet speeds. Now, they say normal caveats apply. It's hard to draw a causal inference from the study, and it's possible there's something else about the 14 gigabit cities that made them better off to begin with. And even when I mentioned this on Facebook earlier today, a guy called Anton from Ireland came back and said to me that it might be that this is cause and effect. It could be that these cities are more entrepreneurial, and maybe that's why they're more productive. They've gone out and gotten this extra speed, and maybe that's why they're more productive. So it is hard to know, but just from my own analysis of the situation or my own experience, getting that extra broadband speed has certainly made me more productive. And I gotta think it's going to be the same with everyone else. Increasing connectivity speeds can only be a good thing. Okay, so the next story, and I thought this was an unusual one. And this is I don't normally tend to promote sites that are charging, but I thought this was an interesting one. Mathematica has been kind of the default mathematics engine that has been used for high-level mathematics on computers, for the last 20 years or more. It's a desktop application. Does extremely high-level mathematics of all kinds, and it has been the kind of the standard that mathematicians have used. So Stephen Wolfram has this blog post on the Wolfram blog today saying, for the first time, they've launched Mathematica, the software, online. It's a browser-based version of Mathematica. It's available through any modern web browser. And in the past, you had to download the software and install it on your computer, but now you can run it out of a browser. And they have a couple of examples, if I can find it here. No, I can't. Must be on a different page. Okay. So they have a couple of examples. You can embed some of the Mathematica code now that you have from this cloud-based version of the application. So it's not cheap. I clicked through to see what the pricing was like because I was curious. There is student pricing, but if you're not a student, then the online-only version starts at 149 euros per year, or 15 euros per month if you do it monthly. That's not too bad, but that's for non-professional use by hobbyists and enthusiasts, so I'm assuming you don't get all the functionality in that. Your standard, on the other hand, is 1,270 per year, and then you've got an enterprise version which is 4,500 per year. So it's not cheap, as I say, unless you're an individual and you're not getting all the functionality. As I said as well, there is a student version, and how much is the student version? The student version isn't much cheaper than the home version. It comes in around 100 euros as well per annum, as far as I recall. So it's interesting to see software like this that has been extremely academic, extremely high level, and very educational, being put in the cloud and being browser delivered for the first time. So that's an interesting one, definitely. Then staying with education for a while, because I said we were sticking with a few themes, and education was one of the bigger themes that I came across in the stories this week. So there's this article from PC World that I saw, which I thought was interesting, and it talks about the best educational software for students. And it goes through 11 different, or 10 actually, 10 different softwares. Some of them I've never heard of, some of them I use, some of them are interesting. The first one they mention is one called Zotero, which is for citing research. So, that's kind of aimed at third level. One called Ginger, which obviously should be close to my own heart, is it's a text editor, but it does a bit of kind of autocorrect and grammar correction and stuff like that as well. So I don't know how useful that might be. It depends on who you are, I guess. This one though, OneNote is the Microsoft note-taking application, and to be honest, I've started using that myself. And one of the great things about it is it syncs up based on, or it syncs up across all kinds of devices. So I have a version of it on my tablet, I have a version of it on my phone, I have a version of it on my computer. And I'm Mac-based, so I have a version. I have iOS versions for iPad and iPhone, and they have Mac versions as well. And this is all free. But they also have PC versions similarly, and tablet-based versions for Android-based tablets and phones. So you get OneNote free. You stick it on your computer, free. You stick it on your tablet, free. You stick it on your phone, free. Then you sync it up with OneDrive, which is Microsoft's answer to Dropbox. And that's free. And better than Dropbox, not alone is it free, but instead of the 5 gigabytes free that you get with Dropbox, you get 15 gigabytes free with OneDrive. So suddenly you have a note-taking application which is better than Evernote, syncs across all your devices, and gives you 15 gigabytes of free storage. I mean, it's a real no-brainer. I was using Evernote, but I've switched over to this now, and I use it sometimes. For example, on my phone, if I come across a couple of links, for example, which might be good for this show, I'll just throw them into a page in OneNote and then come back to the computer later on, and I have them all there listed and ready to go through. So the OneNote is definitely one I can recommend, and it's great for kids as well, I'm sure, for notes. And you can create pages and sections and things like that. So across subjects and things, it should be very useful. It's also searchable, and everything you could expect from that kind of thing. Other ones, Foxit Reader is a PDF reader. Not sure how useful that would be. Audacity. They mention Audacity. Audacity is a sound recording and editing application. It's open source, free, the whole thing. I've been using Audacity. I haven't used it recently, but I was using it back in 2005, 2006 for editing podcasts. So it's great for editing audio. And the use case they talk about in this article is to use it for recording classes or lectures of your teacher so you can listen to them afterwards. So not sure if many students do that, but it's always a possibility. Storage is getting cheaper. Bring your laptop to class, record what the teacher or lecturer says, and there you've got all your notes ready in sound form for you. I can see how that could be useful. Google Drive and Chrome, well, I mean, we all know that. StudyMinder, not sure about that. It's kind of a calendar and to-do list application. Bitcasa is one. It's another cloud storage one. Cold Turkey is one that allows you to set permissions for applications so that basically you don't get distracted. And the last one is Flux. And Flux is one where you change the light settings on your computer so that, as it comes towards the evening, the blue light is filtered out so that you get more kind of orangish and red light coming towards you. And it's the blue light on your monitor is supposed to keep you awake at night time. It interferes with your sleep pattern. So by filtering it out, it helps you get better sleep. So, I don't know. I haven't tried it. Could be worth a look. Not sure. So, moving on. And if you have kids, or you are a kid, or you're interested in learning Scratch. Scratch is a programming language for kids. It's designed to kind of bring kids into programming. And I've mentioned it in the show a few times before. And Linda Sandvik from the Code Club, for example, mentioned this particular site, this creative computing site on Twitter during the week. So I checked it out and it looks quite good. Basically, they have a downloadable guide for learning Scratch and for teaching Scratch. So if you're interested in learning Scratch yourself or teaching Scratch to kids, this is a great resource. Come to this site. As always, links will be in the show notes. Come to this site, download the guide, go through it yourself, and then if you have kids, if you have students, if you're a teacher, if you know a teacher, go through it with them and it'll bring them up to speed on Scratch. It'll teach them programming. It'll teach them a way of thinking, which is very useful in this modern age. So for me, this is brilliant. I came across this. I've shown Scratch to my own kids, and they love it. But to have a proper guide with lesson plans and things like that, really, really important. Moving on. Speaking of kids, speaking of computers, Microsoft buys Mojang. Mojang is the company that's brought out Minecraft. Anyone who has kids knows exactly what I'm talking about. They know what Minecraft is. My own 2 kids love it. Apparently there's about 100 million people using Minecraft, almost all of them kids. What is it? It's like a software version of Lego, I guess. It's a way you can make little virtual worlds. It's really low quality graphics, but it's not about the graphics. It's about the worlds you can create and the cooperation you can do. You can, cooperate with other groups and things online during it. There's no kind of winning or losing in Minecraft. It's all about the building and the creation of stuff. So it's great for building creativity and getting kids into computers. So why did Microsoft buy it? They bought it for $2.5 billion, and in this article by Larry Dignan, he goes through some of the reasons why. Some I think are spot on, some I'm not so sure of. But basically, and I confirmed this today with my own kids, to younger customers, Microsoft's core brand is Xbox. I said to my own kids today, Microsoft, what is Microsoft? And they said, they make the Xbox, and they make games for the Xbox. That's all they know. They've never heard of Windows. They've never heard of Office. Nothing. And these kids are 8 and 11. Never heard of those things. Partly that's because we're a Mac-based family, but still, they've never heard of them. So for them, Microsoft is Xbox and games. So to perpetuate that, buying one of the most successful, if not the most successful games online is a it's a no-brainer for Microsoft, really. So for them, it keeps that going. The other thing that Larry mentions in this, number 2, is the future of Microsoft revolves around mobile and cross-platform applications. And this is true. Office is cross-platform now. You have iOS and Android versions of it, as well as PC and Mac. OneNote I mentioned as well, Skype as well, OneDrive as well, and now Minecraft as well, because Minecraft plays well on the desktop, iOS, and Android. So, and of course, as Larry mentions here, because it's owned by Microsoft now, there'll be a Windows Phone version of it as well for all those kids who have Windows phones, both of them. Minecraft could be the next Lego. Number 3, Minecraft could be the next Lego-like franchise, and that's true. It is Lego-like, as I mentioned before. Mojang would make an Xbox spin-off more feasible. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure if Microsoft will spin off Xbox. I don't see why they would, or if they would, I'd bet my money in the Xbox arm of Microsoft and not what's left behind. And then number 5 is an interesting one. Microsoft gets to use its overseas cash pile. Based on current tax laws, Microsoft's overseas cash can't be brought back to the US without a big tax hit. So instead of repatriating it, they're spending it on foreign investments, foreign acquisitions. And so there you go. They've gone and bought, amongst others, Mojang, a foreign company. So that's 5 good reasons, well, 4.5 good reasons why Microsoft bought Mojang. And if it keeps, as long as they keep it going and they don't interfere too much, it should keep going well. Now this story I thought was really, really cool. Came across this on Facebook today, and I was blown away by it. So it turns out, I think, if you look at the headline, the sub $1 is probably a bit of an exaggeration, but it's certainly sub $5. So for less than $5, you can 3D print a little clip-on that goes onto phones and turns them into microphones, or sorry, into microscopes. I mean, now, I know you've heard of things like this before, where you might, put a little lens on the back of your phone and maybe get a 10x increase on your phone's camera. But that's not what this is. This is much more than that. First of all, this comes from the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. They were tasked to find some way of making cheap microscopes available to use in the field for first responders in the event of, for example, an anthrax scare. So they did, but not alone did they do it, they also made the files available for free download, the 3D printing files available for free download. So you can go to their site, download the free files, and if you have access to a 3D printer, you can create this clip it onto your phone, and get not 10x, but at the low end, get turn your phone into a 100x camera and microscope. So you can use it as a microscope, but then you can take pictures of it as well, plus you can create video. And I said 100x is at the low end because you can also go for 350 or even 1000x. These are 100x, 350x, and 1000x cameras, microscopes that you can clip onto your phone for less than $5 worth of materials. Now, obviously, you need access to a 3D printer, but 3D printers are getting cheaper. I've seen them online for less than $1,500. So, you know, the price of those is coming down, and it's using this. I mean, I'm not talking about for first responders. That kind of use case is just silly because that's going to happen once in a blue moon. But now, for less than $5, schools can break out access to microscopes for kids in their schools for less than $5 per pupil. Previously, if a school wanted to buy a microscope, you were talking 300 to 500 euros for any kind of a half-decent microscope. So this is just freaking awesome. And I haven't looked at the files that they have on their site in the Northwest Laboratory. They talk about using it on an iPhone 5S, and they're saying, you know, it's awesome on the 5S, but they've got files out there for other phones as well. So you don't just need, it doesn't just work for iPhone. It's just a slightly different configuration to switch to a different camera position for a different type of phone. So they've a number of a number of smartphones covered off. So it looks really freaking interesting. I'm psyched about this. I want to get my hands on a 3D printer and try one of these on my own phone. I really do. Okay, we'll keep going. And we're heading into a new theme on the show now, and there's a couple of stories around this, and it's a really big one. And you can see it here. It's hard to avoid Apple this week in terms of press because they've been all over it. They've been all over it with their new phone being released today, their new version of the operating system, iOS 8. But also, there's the blowback from the release of the celebrity photographs and the privacy applications and implications for iPhone users. So we've seen this Apple being reasonably proactive. It took them a couple of weeks, but they've started to change their software and a lot of their policies. Tim Cook has gone on a PR offensive. He's the CEO. He's gone on a PR offensive with a number of different stories. And the first thing he says is they don't want Apple to be a treasure trove of user data for the NSA. So basically he's saying we're not a data company. We don't want to be hosting the data of our users. And any data we do host, and we'll get to that in a second, any data we do host will be encrypted. So even if the authorities come to us and ask us to show them the data, we'll be showing them encrypted data. So I thought that was interesting. He also, in this report, or in this interview, and it is an interview with Charlie Rose, and you can see it on this side here, he takes a swipe at Google. He doesn't mention them by name, but this is something that I've voiced on the last couple of shows, and it's one that Google are going to have to be really, really careful about. Because with the rollout now of Apple's HealthKit, for example, and Google's health applications as well on Android, we've got these two organizations encouraging us to upload our health-based information to the iPhone for sharing with medical personnel. And that's all good, done properly. The difficulty is this is quite personal and sensitive information. And, you know, as I said before, Google make their money off selling the data of their users. Apple make their money off selling software and hardware. And if it were ever found that Apple sold their users' data, that would be the end of them. Literally, they could shut up shop and go home because no one would ever trust them again. Everyone, you know, can make a mistake, like, you know, the celebrity leaks. That was horribly unfortunate for the celebrities in question. It really was. It was nasty. And Apple have, I mean, that could have happened on any platform. And Apple have gone some of the way to shoring that up and stopping that from happening again with two-factor authentication and things like that. They've gone further with that. But it's not their business to sell data. It is Google's. So, you know, you got to stop and think, who am I going to trust with my sensitive data? And Tim Cook is chasing that one down big time for very obvious reasons. They've gone further, though. Tim Cook has put a letter on the Apple site reiterating Apple's commitment to user privacy, and they've put a privacy page up on their own website. And in this, they go through the different applications they have. They talk about iMessage and FaceTime and the fact that those are encrypted end to end and never stored. So that's all safe. In iCloud, they talk about how, and they list out all the different things that are encrypted in iCloud. So your photos in iCloud are encrypted, your documents are encrypted, your calendars are encrypted, your contacts, keychain, backup, bookmarks, reminders, Find My Phone, Find My Friend, mail and notes, they're encrypted in transit. So all these things are encrypted. So, you know, they've gone... I feel sorry for the celebrities whose photos were leaked. I really, really do. I mean, that was just absolutely horrible. But, you know, every cloud has a silver lining and all that. Apple were quite secure before, but now they're chasing down the security and transparency side of things massively because, you know, they got some really bad publicity out of that and they want to make sure that never happens again. Excellent. So for people who are Apple users, excellent. And of course, it's not just that, but they've now said they will no longer unlock iPhones for the police, even with search warrants, because they don't. The access or the information will all be by default encrypted. And not only that, this has a knock-on effect as well for Android, because the newest Androids are joining in this, and they're saying they will offer encryption by default to block police access as well. So now this happens on the iPhone with iOS 8. So anyone who downloads iOS 8 onto an iPhone will by default be encrypted on their phone. With Android, it'll happen with the next version of Android, version L, which is due for release in about a month's time. And so if you have that, then your information will be encrypted by default. So on the Android system, you have to upgrade to L to get it. On Apple, you have to upgrade to iOS 8 to get it by default. So things are improving in privacy slowly, but we are getting there. Okay, we've only a few more stories to go. Unfortunately, John wasn't able to get in. I know he's watching the show because he sent me a few messages on Facebook there. I haven't been able to read them because that's on a different screen. If you do want to talk or chat with me, as Tammy sent a few messages into the Tech for Good hashtag on Twitter, for example. So do feel free to send any questions or comments you have into that hashtag, and they are on the screen in front of me. I've seen the two that Tammy sent in. Thanks, Tammy. So we'll plow on. Only a few more stories left, and one nice one. We're getting away from Apple now, thankfully, says everyone who's not an Apple fan. Facebook has launched an open source organization, and it's releasing a new routing technology. Now, Facebook has been a big proponent of open source for a couple of years now. they've started this organization called To-Do, or Todo. I'm not sure how we're pronouncing that. I'm going to pronounce it To-Do until I'm corrected. And it's short for Talk Openly, Develop Openly. It's a collaboration between Facebook and other technology companies such as Box, Dropbox, GitHub, Google, the Khan Academy, Stripe, Square, Twitter, and Walmart Labs. So some pretty big organizations involved in this. And they're going to start releasing technologies as open source. Twitter have a great track record in open source, as well as Facebook. So I mean, all this is good. They're going to start sharing more technologies. We'll see a lot more stuff being shared, a lot more open stuff. So all that is great. And then, not alone have they done that, but they've gone ahead and released, where was it? This MC router. It's called. I don't know. I don't want to call it. I don't want to call it Mac router, which I'm kind of tempted to, given its name. Because that sounds too much like McDonald's. But there's a blog post there linked to about MC router. I'm sticking to MC router until I'm corrected. But basically, it's a memcached protocol used at Facebook to handle traffic between cache servers across dozens of clusters, et cetera, et cetera. So it's for organizations which have heavy traffic and use caches. This is going to be a very, very useful open source tool to have. So, not for your own blog unless you get enormous traffic on your blog, but still useful to have that kind of thing out there, because all of these kind of open source technologies, when they're shared, they're usually highly efficient, and they keep the energy footprint of these organizations to a minimum. So all good stuff there. Speaking of large organizations, IBM Watson, the cognitive computing engine that IBM released a couple of years ago, they've been really pushing IBM Watson's service. And it started off as a device, a large device. Oh, John's after popping up on the Tech for Good hashtag. Sorry you couldn't get in, John. I'm not sure why. I think the problem, John, wasn't at your end. I think the problem was at the Hangout end, because as well as sending you an invite, I sent an invite to one of my own other email addresses which never arrived either. So I think there's a problem with the invites going out, John, so not your fault. So I was talking about IBM Watson. As I said, it was a device, and then they turned it into an online service. But now they're rolling out a data analysis service out of Watson, and they're doing it on a freemium basis. So at the low end, you can get it for free. You can, throw in log file information, social media information. It's rooted in IBM SPSS analytics, for example. It can find correlations between data sets. It can do visualizations and so on. So it's an incredibly top-end service for plowing through enormous quantities of data and pulling out interesting bits of information from enormous quantities of data, which you could miss with those kind of quantities of data. Like I say, it is freemium, so there'll be a free version and a paid version. One thing though, it says here, premium users will be able to analyze higher volumes of data and more data sources, including live links to sources such as data warehouses and cloud services. So that's what you get at the premium end. At the free end, free use for individuals will have access to all the data refining, predictive and visual analyses, and collaborative capabilities. So that's all fine. The one rub, though, that I saw in this piece was they say freemium users, where was it? It was down near the end there. Yes, the freemium service will be available to all IBM business clients beginning in November. So I'm not an IBM business client. I don't know if any of you are, but if you are, you'll have free access to it. If you're not, well, maybe become one. So, this was great. This was absolutely great. On the Finextra site, this is a really, really interesting article. This is an article about Apple Pay and iPhone 6, but again, while it talks about Apple, it's not really rooted in Apple. This is a story about mobile payments. What they're saying in the article is that because Apple have jumped into the mobile payments fray with their Apple Pay on the iPhone 6, that now that's just cemented it and made it the default standard, and basically it's going to happen across the board. I don't know enough about this space. I don't. So I can't summarize the article properly. But when the show is finished and I publish the links, click on the link, read this article, because it goes really in depth into it. It talks about Africa. It talks about the Mint countries, which was an expression I hadn't come across before. Let's see if I can find it here. Mint was, I think it was Indonesia and somewhere else. Yeah, there you go. Mexico, Indonesia, Nigeria, and Turkey. So it says for markets like the Mint countries, the likelihood of the majority of newly banked will move straight to mobile is extremely high. They won't be given a plastic cards because distribution costs won't support the model. So it won't matter if you're a farmer in Kenya or an Apple fanboy in New York City, mobile payments ubiquity is inevitable. Apple has just cemented that future into place sooner rather than later. So while don't get, whether you're an Apple fan or not, don't get hung up on the title of the article. The fact is, what it's saying is NFC, near-field communications, and mobile payments have just gotten a major boost, and they are going to become the norm in the next couple of years. One of the big hold-ups to it has been the US, which is extremely far behind everyone else in payments technologies. But obviously, someone like Apple going to mobile in the US and pushing it out through some of the large retailers means it will become standard there. And there's actually legislation in place in the US which is moving the US to chip and pin, for example, for credit cards, finally. So the US is having to move anyway. So NFC is going to become pretty much standard in the US and also in the rest of the world. So I see a comment from Tammy there. It's a great Tech for Good today. Excellent, thank you. I'm learning a lot. I didn't get a reminder either. I had to go to Google+. Oh, I'm sorry about that. That's weird. I sent out the reminders this morning. I normally send them out on Thursday. I sent them out today. I was a little late sending out the reminders this week. I'm sorry. I was just absolutely up the walls this week. So sorry about that, Tammy. I don't know why you didn't get the reminder. Anyway, so reminders apparently not going out, and the invite didn't go to John either. That's okay. This is what happens when you're using someone else's technology, I guess. I'm beholden to Google to have their stuff working. Okay, 2 stories left. Health-related stories, both of them. The first one is an interesting one, and again, it's Apple. I'm sorry. I know I'm an Apple fan, but I try and avoid, bigging up Apple on the show. But there's just been a huge amount of news this last couple of weeks with the release of the phones and iOS 8 and all that, so it's been hard to avoid. I didn't mention the new phones, for example. Didn't go near them, and there's been a ton of stories about them. So, it's not too bad. So, but 2 Apple medical trials are shedding light on how HealthKit will work. HealthKit, the application on the iOS. And as I say, there's a similar one on Android as well. So there's 2 trials by 2 prominent US hospitals. The Stanford University Hospital is one, and Duke University is the other. And they're using it to let physicians track blood sugar levels for children with diabetes, and Duke is using it to pilot blood pressure, weight, and other measurements for patients with cancer or heart disease. Now, for me, these are 2 incredibly obvious uses of these technologies. And we're at the very start of this. This is just going to become the norm, the same way that everyone uses GPS on their phone as the norm. It's absolutely. So today, you go into your doctor's office, he rolls up your sleeve, puts on the blood pressure cuff, takes your blood pressure, listens to your heart, takes your pulse, writes them down, and he gets a snapshot of your pulse and your blood pressure at that point in time. Now, this could be a point in time where you're rushing So you've run into your doctor's place, you've been sitting in the surgery waiting to be seen by the doctor for 15, 20, 30 minutes, depending on how busy he or she is. You're stressed out, you're not feeling well, so your blood pressure is bound to be on the high side and your pulse a little on the high side, and you're rushing because you've got to get back to work or pick up the kids from school or whatever. Not a good snapshot. Whereas if you can walk into your doctor's surgery or email into your doctor's surgery your blood pressure over the last week or month and your pulse over the last week or month, suddenly your doctor is getting not just a snapshot at a point in time, but they're getting a look at a more normal version of your health. So, and they can see patterns in it. It's going to take time, I suspect, for doctors to know how to look at a week's worth of blood pressure data or a week's worth of pulse data, because it's not something they'll be used to seeing. But very quickly it will be, and it'll be a lot deeper and richer source of information for them, and you'll find diagnostically it'll be far more useful for them. So I'm really psyched about this. The technological breakthroughs we'll see in medicine in the next 2-3 years as a result of these kinds of technologies are just going to be off the charts, pardon the pun, awesome. They're just going to blow it out of the water. It's going to be amazing. And I'm just talking about the next 2 to 3 years. In the next 10 years, wow, I can't wait to see what happens. And speaking of, last story today, and this is a really important one. So, this is an Indiegogo campaign. And this picture is of a kid called Diamo. And Diamo was the son of 2 friends of mine, Naveed and Sam, based in London. And he was born with cerebral palsy. And he died, unfortunately, at the age of 9 a few years ago. But his parents, Naveed and Sam, have set up a company now to take advantage of the advances that 3D printing have brought us. And the backstory to this is that their kid, Diamo, used to need to get braces fitted for his back. And the process of getting a brace for him and for other kids who need these kinds of things, they're called orthotics. The process of getting these orthotics for kids like these is they have to bring them to an orthotics clinic where the kid has to be pretty much restrained and then covered in plaster of Paris. So for a kid who needs a back brace, they have to get the plaster of Paris put around their chest and their back, so completely encased in plaster of Paris. And then they have to leave that set. So the process is not pleasant. It takes several hours. And then the cast has to be cut. And then you have a mold or an imprint of the kid's body. But of course the kid has probably been struggling and moving and had to be held down to try and get the plaster of Paris on. And then it takes 2 or 3 months for the brace to be made and shipped to the parents, by which time the kid is after growing and now the brace doesn't fit properly. So a really unsatisfactory way of producing braces or orthotics, as they're called, for kids like these. So these guys, Naveed and Sam, thought there has to be a better way, and there is, and they've come up with it. And what it is they laser scan kids who need orthotics. And the laser scan, instead of taking hours and kids struggling to, being held down and covered in plaster of Paris, the laser scan takes a maximum of 2 minutes. It's just, get the kid to lie still for 2 seconds and then point a laser at them and it scans up and down. It's a 3D scan, which is then turned into a file which can be sent to a 3D printer, which can print out the brace in a matter of 1 to 2 days instead of months later. The costs come way down. The turnaround time goes way down. And the kid gets a better product as a result of it, and it's less stressful, and it's less stressful for the parents as well as the kid, and the whole thing just seems like an amazingly good idea. They're looking to raise £60,000 on this Indiegogo campaign to get the company off the ground. They've already got some investment, but they need £60,000 to get further. So go to this site. again, the links will be in the show notes at the end. Go to the site, click on the contribute now, and contribute, even if it's only a £10 contribution. Do it. You can go further. You can go to the £30, £65, £100, £500, £1,000, £5,000, £10,000, £15,000 if you have a company and you want to contribute to this. That would be awesome. You can go up to 100,000 if you want. This is Sam and this is Naveed, Diamo's parents. They've started this company, and this is Lee, he's their tech guy. They've started this company and they have an advisory board. My colleague James Governor is on the board, you know, full disclosure. I know these guys, they're such good people, and what they're trying to do is so important. I would urge any and all of you to go to this site and contribute. Okay, that's the show for this week. Curiously, ending before the hour, so you get 10 minutes of your lives back. Okay, thanks everyone for your interest and attention this week. We'll be back next week. The guest next week is from SAP. It's Samir Patel. Hopefully we'll manage to get him on the show because unfortunately John wasn't able to join this week. John, we'll line you up for another week. Okay, you're not getting away that easily. We'll line you up for sometime in October. All right, so back next week with, as I say, guest Samir Patel. And thanks for your interest and attention. We'll see you same time, same back channel next week. All the best. Bye-bye.